I think what captured the public kind of consciousness or imagination was ChatGPT and its utility to just basically everyday life. Many people thought that was a challenge that was nearly impossible to solve. But over the last couple of years, we've been able to develop artificial intelligence that sits inside our electrical equipment and can actually detect that high impedance line fault. I used to come to work every day amazed with the quality of people I worked with. So I'm always looking for and try to create that myself. I would say, high bar when you think of some of the places I mentioned, to create that environment where different types of multidisciplinary thinking come together and to try to solve problems. I think that's where magic happens.
Mark Kelly, Senior VP, Eaton, thank you very much for coming into the podcast today.
You're very welcome, Mark Kelly.
You are the first Mark Kelly I've ever interviewed that hasn't been a ChatGPT of me as well. So I was just driving yesterday when we were talking, thinking, how are we going to make this work? But I think we will. And we actually live not too far away from each other as well, so it's going to get even more
We better not run into each other at speed, or there's some sort of particle acceleration that could happen maybe. Yeah.
So you've been around AI for the last 20 years in a few different kind of
guises.
Yeah. Where do you kind of land with what's happened now? Were you surprised? Have you been expecting it? What are you thinking?
Not surprised. Probably one of the things that took me by surprise was, for example, we had been working around transformers and things like BERT earlier on for translation and using it in different systems. But I think with 3.5, I guess, really, a ChatGPT, I was surprised how that propel the kind of consciousness forward of people's use of ChatGPT. Just its utility, its usefulness just exploded into life. And, AI has had many what they call, false dawns and winters. So to see it in the last 2 years go from, in a way, right, even neural networks were around for a good couple of years. They were having a lot of success in machine vision. Kind of the Jeff Hinton side of the world. Those were well known. They were making in ImageNet and so on. They were making great progress. But I think what captured the public kind of consciousness or imagination was ChatGPT and its utility to just basically everyday life. Summarize this document. Write me an outline of a presentation. Write me the outline of whatever it is, a story, a document. I think all of a sudden then the utility of AI just went from being something that was embedded within technology to being a tool available to everybody.
And they took the interface and they made it accessible to so many people. I sat down with Sarah Fryer, CFO from OpenAI, a few weeks ago. She told me 1 billion users are now using ChatGPT. 1 billion users. 85% of them are outside of America. I would just have thought it would be actually inside America, but one of their biggest markets is Germany, right? So it's just incredible how quickly it spread. Another stat for you, 15% of them are kind of the paid premium users as well, right? So it's just incredible how quickly they've kind of gone in and grown.
And it probably tells you something about the value that those people are putting in that technology. If you think about sometimes the ease of access, the ease of use, right, and then you become part of the product, the famous saying. But the fact that people see this as something much more valuable, right, they're putting a value on it, actually could probably have an impact on how we think about software going forward.
Yeah.
But I think I'd seen a stat as well. It took Facebook, Netflix, all these other kind of services that are effectively common. Years upon years, say 3 to 7 years to get to this, Spotify, 8 years, what ChatGPT had done in a month.
Yeah, so 1 million users 5 days, 100 million users 2 months, and then I said now 1 billion users. But then the second fastest growing company that no one ever seems to talk about is Character AI, where you've got all these kind of digital avatars, 250 million people going on per day, perfect boyfriend, school teacher that didn't get you, you go back to role play and have a conversation with them, and it's incredible. And then you've got Musk introduced kind of companions last week, all these kind of deep avatars. So these relationships are kind of growing kind of first and foremost. So it is starting to turn into a really, really kind of a weird time.
Weird time is a good way to think about it, in the way life now imitating art. If you think of that, I don't know if you've seen that movie Horror, right?
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix. And even the way in which the conversational AIs are forming, it's not even the natural language, it's the delivery of the language is nearly scary. Of course, that has very interesting applications, as very scary applications
Yeah.
as well. You're hearing about kind of cybercrime now evolving into being able to impersonate your parents, your child, whatever the case is.
And they're so they're so nuanced with the kind of the hacks that they put in. So it's like, someone has just passed away, we need you to send me the money, and they use it in such a way that you would be kind of brought in on that. Your role at Eaton, and I always think of Eaton as the company that like people just don't know about. Like 100,000 people in the company. Your technology is pretty much embedded into nearly everything that we do in some cases. Yeah. Tell us a little about Eaton. Tell about some of the use cases that you're using AI in every day.
Yeah, Eaton is a global multinational company. It's actually, it specialises really. The heart of Eaton is it really understands in power management, delivering power safely, securely. When you think about power, like examples we're just talking about in AI, those data centers needed an enormous amount of power. They needed it safe, they needed it reliable, they needed to be able to be distributed. Eaton are experts, world-class experts in that. If you think about circuit protection, if you think of power distribution in electrical vehicles, buildings, hospitals, malls, Eaton is a massive organisation serving lots of end market segments. And because of them, different segments moves at different paces. We have a very interesting kind of view of the world. What we do in the Centre for Intelligent Power, a global organisation, we work across a couple of end market segments. I can talk a little bit about them and then talk about the kind of work we do in specifically around AI. So in vehicle, we're in traditional transmission businesses, right? There's no large trucks that move groceries around North America, move logistics and everyone's Amazon packages, to commercial vehicles. We do more and more electric vehicle work. If you think of power distribution, many modern cars are effectively computers on wheels in some ways. Data centers is obviously an enormously growing industry. Fueled by effectively AI. The explosion has just been phenomenal. If you think of utilities and then you think of electrification, electric vehicles, the grid requiring more power, most people, certainly in Europe, are very much aware of the cost of power to heat your home, to have electricity in your home. So this whole energy transition, this move to electrification, Eaton is a major player global major player in them. And sometimes where you haven't heard of them, if you think of Eaton, it's actually business to business.
Yeah.
Our partners are Boeing, they're Microsoft. They're companies like that sometimes they're maybe at the front, but we're very much a very integrated organization, integrated company. But we really do serve these diverse end markets. And if you think about them, at the heart of when we think about AI, digitalization, there's a fundamental transformation of our electrical infrastructure, of our relationship with electricity, and the requirements of that for how we now live our lives.
Yeah.
Like those data centers, they require an enormous amount of power, safely and delivery to keep up with demand of applications like you just mentioned, Mark, but they're constantly evolving as well. And more of our lives is lived digitally.
Yeah.
Podcast, everything is digital.
And I can see how you would have a certain perspective, a certain view on that. And locally, what type of use cases are you working on?
Yeah, generally we work on global use cases. One of the more interesting ones we've finished off recently, for example, is the work we do in the Centre for Intelligent Power is probably a little bit different than sometimes other AI work, in that a lot of what we're trying to do is to embed AI into products and services we have to help them run more reliably and dependably. And also then building kind of cloud-based applications to take advantage of that, right? So in other words, to be able to help manage your factory. But generally, people have more than one factory, large companies that we serve. They have more than one data center. So you're looking to help them, how can I optimally manage multiple data centers? Or how can I optimally manage multiple pieces of equipment in a factory or an enterprise of factories? So oftentimes we're building intelligence inside of devices. So in other words, we're making AI that can optimally run. And normally what we're developing is like co-processors or accelerators inside our products and services. I'll talk a little bit about some examples in there. And generally what we're doing is using kind of hybrid kind of environments. Oftentimes many of our customers, they operate in critical infrastructure. They're a little less comfortable, and understandably so, having all their data on a public cloud. So you're often either working on a hybrid model. So you might have a lot of your edge data stored on premise. And some of that may be used for the cloud for certain types of training, but oftentimes you might be doing training on the cloud as well. And of course, your inference on the edge. An example product we just released, we're very proud of, our motor health analytics. This is technology that we use, effectively just the electrical signals, to be able to determine motors, how a motor's running, what type of failures we can predict and how far in advance. And of course, if you think of where motors are placed in industry, they're in every factory. They're in nearly every building. If you think of lifts and elevators, pumps, all of these.
Could that be also like kind of wind turbines, or even kind of like in a plane, kind of things like that? So all those different types of motors. Yeah.
Like motors are everywhere, and they're becoming more and more electrified. So that's a hugely important piece of work, and more important for the way we wanted to solve that problem is we wanted to use the expertise that is deeply embedded in our company. So if you think of what we really understand in Eaton, we understand how to understand the electrical waveform. We understand how to manipulate in such a way that we can protect or break circuits.
Yeah.
We can use it in ways to understand how to optimally run a machine or optimize power delivery. And then the applications around that, right, are manifold. They're just, absolutely enormous. So that technology we've been testing and developing for a number of years. In a company like Eaton, one of the challenges we have and one of the promises of our brand is we make our motors work. And when you think about that, means we have to test very rigorously. We don't have the kind of same philosophy of move fast and break things. We have customers depend on us. So we go through a rigorous testing cycle. We validate and test our technology in our own factories. We have over 300 of them. We test our own technology inside our own business as well to enable us scale, to be able to work with our partners as well. Another great example we did working in America was with the Department of Defense, was around wildfire detection. We announced that recently as well, work we've been doing with, for instance, utility partners. Our technology enables us to detect when a line is fallen on the ground and generates heat, known as a high impedance fault. That can be caused by high winds or general weather conditions. It can cause electrical lines to fall. It's not uncommon at all anywhere in the world. But of course, some of the consequences of that are devastating.
Yeah, we saw in Hawaii, LA.
Devastating.
Yeah.
So we often thought, or many people thought, that was a challenge that was nearly impossible to solve. But over the last couple of years, we've been able to develop artificial intelligence that sits inside our electrical equipment and can actually detect that high impedance line fault in a matter of a second to like an absolute high degree of accuracy.
So that's kind of like an anomaly detection, is this?
A form of anomaly detection, but the level of waveform analysis we're doing is very, very high frequency because we were looking across oftentimes multiple lines, sometimes at like sampling at really, really high frequency, like 7 kilohertz. And you're looking for an anomaly, a signature, and you'd operate at like in the millisecond range, so you can kind of shut the line down a second. Because literally every second counts. If you have a wire that's down on the ground, what's happening is heat is generating, and once the heat generates, you're in all sorts of trouble. So we're very excited about that. Very excited to be partnering with the utility groups. And,
it's an incredible technology impact, and for most people driving around, they'll never think about what's happening there. But I can imagine the reassurance. And as you rightly said, you're in the business of consistency and trust, where the vast majority of the stuff from LLMs at the moment are in beta. And you take it on the basis of a 70%, 80%, you're doing okay, but it's in beta and you don't quite kind of sure for scale. And then on the interesting thing is you're doing things like kind of predictive maintenance, but you're doing it at scale. So then you're allowing for next best action and real-time insight. So you've kind of got these kind of dashboards that are giving you this real-time insight, and then you can kind of make better decisions. An impact that comes to mind is obviously like the supply chain becomes so much more optimal because you can plan these things in advance in real time.
Yeah, and I work mainly on, I would say, the product side of AI within our company. We've we're a large company. We have our IT team that have been working in terms of helping to modernize and implement AI inside the company as well. And we've been very committed that we've an organization that's passionate about it, driving that forward. And we all work together effectively to solve those problems. We have, by the virtue of the fact that the amount of diversity of products we make, we have a complex supply chain. We have multiple different factories making different types of products at any point in time. We are the poster child for complexity and scale in some ways of ourselves. And we use AI not only in our products, but we live and breathe AI in the company and how we run our supply chain, how we optimize our supply chain, how we run our IT infrastructure. But in the products we make, the bar is just that little bit higher mark, because the value promise, and again, if you think of where we sit sometimes in those areas that you don't see but take for granted. Switch gear, even in your own home, if you think about your load center, your circuit panel, load center would be more of a North American term. It means the same thing. you want to be assured that that's keeping you safe, and that's the value promise we give to our customers. So when we're using our technology, we tend to. So for example, we do use large language models. We have people that we've developed transformer-based technology, but some of the technology we build, we had slightly different areas of AI. For example, we use physics-informed AI or physics-informed neural networks, which tend to mean that we are training the data not with a corpus of tweets, texts, information off different sources. It tends to be on the understanding of the physics of how systems need to work.
Yeah.
So there's a different approach and a form of determinism that's required, or certainly deterministic behavior from what's effectively a kind of stochastic system, in the sense that that's what a neural network kind of is.
It blows my mind that only 5% of our listeners actually subscribe to the podcast. We've got one favour to ask. Please, can you subscribe to the podcast? If you like our content, you subscribing will make a huge difference to the guests that we can get on the show, and also be a voice for AI applied across Ireland, but doing it the right way. Now back to the show. And day to day yourself, of how you're using AI to be a little bit more productive, I don't know, summarizations, content creation, is it visualization? What type of stuff would you do yourself?
I have to say I had a bit of an existential crisis when I really realised the power and the performance improvements of ChatGPT, because I would have always thought it was great for summarising, great for giving me data, and I would then write the report or write the white paper or develop a research paper. I still think when we look at research papers, you can spot some that are excessively AI driven, but I think more and more what we're using as tools to maybe, give me the top 10 pieces of research in this space. The technology is getting better as well around hallucinations, early chat GPTs and so on. You would get like 9 references or 10 references. 9 of them will be garbage. Yeah. I think that's probably reversed at this stage. So where I've been using it, I find it very useful in exactly as you said, in summarising, data. I use it sometimes even to analyse reports. I will use it for give me an outline of a kind of a presentation, or I will sometimes jot down what I'm thinking about a presentation, and it will give me a bit more structure, or evaluate the presentation, evaluate my thinking on this. I use it in multiple different ways, but really much as a tool, a partner in a way, right? A kind of a digital assistant. I've messed around with different types of agents. I've used a kind of a model where I have a mixture of experts, but not in a mixture of agents is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I use one that might be a little bit more adversarial. So using that model that used to be known as the Bono 6 hats, one might be the critic and so on. You set them up in that way to evaluate the early thinking and so on.
I really think this is going to go somewhere, because I regularly talk about having my counsel, my marketing officer, finance, procurement, sales, and I kind of bounce off ideas off them.
Yeah.
But even just putting in the prompt of devil's advocate, you get such back nuanced answer that you can start to actually evaluate and go, actually, this is the real world. There's grey areas. Feed them back into me and give me some more kind of context about why you feel like that. And then if you give it more really, really good data points and give it the kind of the prompt, it can really kind of help to shape that, because we've all got blind spots. And then kind of getting that insight can be very, very helpful. Switching gears for new people, and I know 700 people now in Ireland. Eaton's got a great story. For new people starting to graduate or start to use this technology kind of in maybe their mid-years, what advice would you be kind of sharing with them? Because there's the element of, yes, you want to ramp up and become very, very effective utilising it. But there's also the element of actually understanding how to do it in the first place and spotting mistakes, that you don't become reliant and that you actually can't actually spot a mistake because you've actually never done it yourself.
Yeah, I actually think that's going to be a real challenge for us. But I do think, I've always thought that there is 3 major personas working with AI. You have the users of AI, that people are like, and I'm one of them as well. Sometimes they're all 3 of these personas. You're using AI on a day-to-day basis, and you can be like a super user, power user, an expert, right? An expert user. And, leveraging those tools, there's people that are incredibly inventive of how they've set up multi-agent systems, exactly like you were describing, Mark. But fundamentally, they are users, they are practitioners in a way of using the AI. And then there's kind of tuners, and they're a group of people that are taking maybe technologies such as what OpenAI have and fine-tuning them. or creating a version of them. If you think of Claude, which you mentioned earlier, there's multiple businesses that have built, particularly coding agents, it'd be popular with Claude, that have built technologies around them. They're kind of tuners of that technology.
Yeah.
They're applying it in new ways. They're very, very, technologically savvy. They're building new applications normally around it by tuning the underlying AI. So you have the users, and then you have the tuners, and then you have the creators. And the creators, to me, are the kind of maths people. They're the computer scientists, right? They're normally developing algorithms. They're writing algorithms. I think what we're seeing is at different rates that they're taking, there's progress in each of them, but they are different personas in the AI sphere or ecosystem. Most of the people that work for me would be in the creator side, right? They making algorithms, they are testing algorithms, they're maths geeks and they're computer scientists. And we're ultimately looking to build that algorithm to optimize something, predict something. I think the advice I would give users is those that are leveraging AI to give themselves a competitive advantage in their job, in their day-to-day job, or giving them their ability to do more. I think that's absolutely essential. I think with the tuners and then the creators, it becomes a little bit more different, because one of the things you have to be able to do is not become so reliant on any tool that you become, to use old parlance, you become a floppy disk expert. So you have to somehow keep your skills fresher, and you need to have a degree of critical evaluation of the different technologies. That's experience, that's practice. That's also probably making sure you don't get caught into any one form of ecosystem or not. And the same is true then for the creators, because the kind of allure of it must be this makes it easy. And one of the big worries I do have about AI is that it will eventually start to move from being an aid to directing in some way. Whether that's intentionally, and one has to believe that's the case, we've done this with social media, or unintentionally, in that it just becomes so reliant on it as a crutch.
So my thought process is that you need to know it, and then you can know how to use AI. You can determine if you use it or not for your day-to-day work. But I still think ducking your head in the sand and actually saying, I'm not going to even learn about it, is a really, really bad mistake to make.
It would be unwise.
Yeah.
Just as you think about literacy, this is just another form of technological literacy. Years ago, remember, you had to have like a word, and you had to be conversant in the kind of the Office ecosystem.
Yeah.
Then it became people expected you to be somewhat savvy with, SMAC kind of, social, mobile, cloud technologies. And now I think it's the era of AI. So
it's a funny one, because in one way you're hearing this AI is overhyped, and there's a lot of these I'm seeing a lot of these kind of pylons go, look, it's not as good as it says it is, not as good as it says it is. And then I'm kind of feeling it's like, okay, I totally get that you could see hyped, whatever, it's not as good as it says it is, but look how good it's gone the last 2 years compared to where it was. And different people have got different bars, and it's kind of crazy when you're in social media, where you've got these people who love it, some people who are actually taking this completely overhyped. Are you somewhere in the middle? Where are you kind of?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. I think there's an inevitability about its entry into our everyday lives. I think where the technology is probably from the computer science side of it, right? And I still think there's a lot of work to be done around reasoning. There's a lot of conversations you hear about this idea of, consciousness and all of that stuff, right? I think the performance is continuing to improve, and I think it will. I don't think there's any putting the genie back in the bottle. There's no returning that somehow this is like we're going to enter into an AI winter. I think the hype curve will maybe settle out a little bit. Like if you think of things like, even things like hallucinations, they're getting better and better. In my world, I think there's going to be other forms of AI that are more important to a lot of the work we would do in our products. So for example, I mentioned physics-informed AI. In other words, AI that's informed by effectively the physical physics, effectively physical laws. How certain machines or certain electrical phenomena have to happen. I think that's going to be really important in that space. I think this kind of combination of connectionism and symbolism, or neurosymbolic AI, is going to be important for this kind of idea of more deeper reasoning. That's another area of topics that we're very interested in and have been working on for a long time. And actually, another area that I think is going to be very interesting is these collaborative or cooperative AIs. So different forms of AIs that might be even adversarial against each other.
Yeah.
There is been a huge adversarial machine learning, for example, is being used for, there was people were hacking car science to try and fool the kind of vision systems on cars. I think you'll see a little bit of that, right? We talked about that, the Bono, where you maybe have not just a bunch of people telling you, give me advice. It almost helped me pinpoint where I'm not thinking or where I have black spots, whatever the case of it is. And I think that kind of collaborative AI, that mixture, these multi-agent systems, agentic AI, I think what they call it, mixtures of experts, all different AIs maybe working with different biases, different types of objective functions. I think they're going to be powerful. The future. In fact, the way I would think about it is, in our world, I think we're going to see a mixture of those different types of ones coming together to be most useful. Yeah. But that's not to say large language models aren't useful. They're like becoming a utility in some ways. But I do think the opportunity for like startups to just the cost around training these large language models is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's dropping.
Yeah, they are. It's considerably dropping, but it is still very, very high. Yeah. Final question: any particular book that had an impact on you growing up, where kind of a sliding doors moment, or anything that kind of you always refer to at a kind of an important message?
Oh, well, a few. I'm trying to think which one would be the most relevant. I think the one that I really liked is a book by George Dyson, and it was called Turing's Cathedral. And it was about how the first PC came into being. And it's actually relevant for, I think, today of the conversation with AI. So if you think about the first computer, there's a guy called John von Neumann, very famous on Neumann architecture. He was trying to bridge the world between, call it, the engineers and the theoreticians. So in IAS, the Institute of Advanced Studies in Princeton, you had Einstein and you had all of those folks there. I think actually Dyson's father was a very famous physicist as well. You had the theorists and then you had the engineers. And when they kind of came together, what they were able to do is create the first kind of real, what you might call von Neumann architecture, as arguably it's being supplanted in a way with GPUs and so on at the moment. But what I loved about that book, it kind of had a view of teamwork and also finding you bring different types of people solving what seemed like intractable problems together. And that multidisciplinary approach tends to lead to unbelievable outcomes. That's a book that stuck with me, Mark, I'd say. There's lots of other ones. I tend to be a bit of a nerd around the history of Silicon Valley. For example, there's another great book around Licklider, absolutely brilliant book. And then there's another one around Bell Labs and the environment of what Bell Labs was, and how that, if you think of Transistor, Claude Shannon, Shockley, all of these in the one environment, how was that environment nurtured? And how do you enable that type of kind of happen chance to happen and these ideas clashing off each other and great things happening? I was lucky in an early part of my career, I worked in Intel Labs, and that was phenomenal for invention. I used to come to work every day amazed with the quality of people I worked with. So I'm always looking for and try to create that myself. I would say, high bar when you think of some of the places I mentioned, to create that environment where different types of multidisciplinary thinking come together and to try to solve problems. I think that's where magic happens. So I always gravitate towards them types of books.
Yeah.
About not necessarily about the outcome, but what was the conditions to enable.
Yeah, the kind of conditions and also the process. Yeah. And kind of enabling that ecosystem to kind of grow and flourish. That's going in the background. And we're so experienced, we're so influenced by who we spend time with, the environment that we're in as well. Mark Kelly, Senior VP at Eaton, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
You're welcome.
At AI Ireland, we're helping over 1 million people become literate using artificial intelligence. And we do this in a variety of different ways. The easiest way is our AI literacy program, where we do a 60 to 90 minute program via virtual Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where we teach the rules of the road of AI, from basic business concepts to ethical and resourceful decisions on how you actually use AI every day. This is our literacy foundation. The second way we use AI training is within our workshops. These are either virtual or in-person workshops where executive leaders come and use some of the AI tools that we make available for them, that they can actually start to take their own documents and reimagine savings of time and energy, but taking away friction from the work that they do each day. Later on, we actually empower different departments HR, finance, sales, marketing, operations, and start to utilize AI across relevant use cases to upskill their different types of departments. If you're interested and ready to go on your AI journey, we'll be able to showcase over 700 applications of applied AI about how you can actually stop reinventing the wheel and start using AI for your organization today. If you want to start out and find out a little bit about the golden thread of activities that we've got to allow you to start to utilize AI straight away, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll give you a good comprehensive overview about the arts of the possible, minus the hype, purely applied. See you then.